Hey guys, thanks for coming back and joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. Glad to have you back. In today's episode, we are going to give you 8 tips to stop procrastinating. So, I think this is a habit that all of us have experienced at some point, and it is an absolute time killer. It has a lot of negative effects on you mentally, in particular. So, we thought it was a good episode to cover, and it's something that we're focused on really kind of tightening up and making sure that we're making the best use of our time as possible. So that's what led us to the episode. Wanted to cover it and give you guys some tips. Hopefully, these will help you out and you guys can be more efficient and effective at what you're trying to get done. So, as you know, we always like to do, we try to define what it is that we're talking about or what the problem is, or look at it from a fact based, left brained perspective. So that's what we're going to do first. So, what is procrastination? I'll tell you later. so, in all seriousness, procrastination is the act of delaying or postponing something. So these are common phrases that you will say in your head or out loud when you're procrastinating on something. I'll do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. We all know how it works. And we know that we typically procrastinate when we face tasks that are mundane, boring, unpleasant, or challenging. Like if we know something's going to suck, or we feel like something's going to be tedious, or we feel like there could be a negative experience that comes from it, we will push that task off um, somewhere down the road. Try to avoid it. Like it's just an act of avoidance, it's a coping mechanism. So think about a project that you have at work or when you're in school, whatever. If you're young, you might still be in school. That's fine. And you've got a semester to do the project. You typically don't say, you know what, if I work for a half hour a day, I can be done halfway through the semester and have this thing off my back. What you do is find a reason to do something else. You clean your room, you scroll through videos, you binge watch something on Netflix or Hulu or whatever you're watching. Um, you go out with your friends. You always find a reason to do something else. You're procrastinating because it's going to suck and you don't want to do it. And then the 11th hour comes and you've got all sorts of challenges and you're up all night and drinking Red Bulls and doing crazy stuff to try to get this thing done. Low quality work, high stress environment could have totally been avoided if you just chunked it out. Sounds great to say. I can tell you that I procrastinate on stuff just like everybody else. I am no exception to this rule. And I work well under pressure and blah, blah, blah. I tell myself all the same things everybody that procrastinates tells themselves. So, I got something out of putting together this episode as well. But what we're doing, it's important to recognize what it is we're doing when we procrastinate. We are avoiding something that we don't like. That's what we're doing. And we're trying to make ourselves feel better now at the expense of feeling significantly worse later down the road. And so that's why it's important, I think, to look at what it is that you're procrastinating on or about and what you can do to avoid those procrastinations. Because the reality is, it does provide temporary relief now. I'll forget about it. I'll put it out of my head. I don't have to worry about it for 3 weeks. It's not that big of a deal. But the reality is that task is still there and it's kind of hanging over us. It's like a cloud we see off in the distance. We know that cloud is coming at us. And we could do lots of things. We could get in our car and drive to sunnier weather. We could go inside where it's nice and warm with a cup of hot chocolate and a fire going and watch a movie. But we don't deal with that cloud until it's right over us. That's when we deal with it. It hangs around out there, and the problem with it is many times you will feel that burden for a long period of time, and it's not just one thing generally that you're procrastinating on. If you have multiple things at work, multiple things in your relationships, multiple things in your personal life, whatever the case may be, you have things that you're avoiding, and those things pop into your head and create a little bit of friction and a little bit of friction and a little bit of friction. And pretty soon that friction adds up to pretty significant friction. And it gets in your way of feeling good, of having good self esteem, of having positive thoughts, of thinking about positive things and focusing on productive things because you're procrastinating on stuff that you don't want to do. And so that's why we want to tackle it. That's why we want to try to eliminate it as much as possible. So there's kind of a cycle to procrastination. And what does that cycle look like? Let's walk through it real quick. Step one, task avoidance. I'll get to it later. I'll do it tomorrow. It's not due for a month. I don't have to worry about it yet, etc., etc., right? We've all said those things. And what do we do? How do we feel after we say those things? We feel good. Short term relief is step two in the procrastination cycle. You actually feel good for a little bit about pushing this off because you don't have to worry about it anymore. You've put it out of your mind, you've compartmentalized it, it's out there somewhere, but you don't really have to worry about it right now. So now time passes, and step three kicks in. It's an increase in stress and anxiety. Shit, I know I've got that project out there. I haven't done anything on it. I really should have done something 2 weeks ago, but I didn't. Oh, well, I've still got 2 weeks left. So it's not that big of a deal, but that ratchets up. It ratchets that pressure, that intensity, that stress, that anxiety ratchets up a little bit at a time and a little bit at a time and a little bit at a time until you get to point four of the procrastination cycle, which is the crisis point. Ah, shit, this is probably 2 days worth of work and I only got 2 days left. Now I got to drop everything and focus entirely on this project that I knew I had a month to do, but I didn't touch it until right now. And so that's the stress, that's the crisis point in the procrastination cycle. And that's what you want to avoid because that's where it's really high stress. You're working under pressure. It's easy to make mistakes. It's easy to lose your wits. It's easy to turn in poor quality work that reflects badly on you personally or professionally. And then that leads to number five, which is regret and feelings of shame. Why didn't I just do this when I had a month to do it? Why didn't I just chunk it out a little bit at a time? What's the matter with me? I'm so stupid. I'm so lazy. I'm so inept. All of those negative thoughts start to cycle in your head and you repeat the loop on something else. Well, I can't do that right anyways. Why should I worry about anything? Right? It's like if you had a flat tire, would you pop the other three tires on your car? Hell no. You change the tire and move on. You wouldn't scrap the car and say, oh, it's got a flat tire. It's useless. It's gone. Forget about the car. Right? But we tend to do that when we have mistakes or we do something that bothers us, that we feel bad about, that we feel regret and shame about. And procrastination can put you in that situation many, many times. And so by not procrastinating, by tackling things as they come at us as much as possible, or at least making progress on them, that little bit of progress can make a huge difference mentally and emotionally in your mind. And so we've got 8 tips here that you can try to reduce or eliminate procrastination in your life. So tip number one is focus on time management techniques. Now that's not about being as efficient as possible. It's not the point. But if you use time management techniques, one of the things you can do when you use time management techniques is block out time where you forbid social media, you forbid phone calls and emails, you forbid television being on, whatever the case may be. And when you do time management, you can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to block out 2 hours or I'm not going to do anything but focus on the tough stuff. We would argue that a good time to do that is very first thing, right? So we've talked about it on this channel before. If you've got to swallow a frog, if you've got to wade through a lake of crap, if you've got to do something that's unpleasant, you're best off going at it head on and getting it done. Winston Churchill once said, if you're going through hell, keep going, right? You don't want to stop and enjoy the scenery. You don't want to make it stay around there any longer than you have to. So by focusing on time management techniques, you can block out times that you're ultra productive. So I suggested early morning. If you're a night person, fine, doesn't matter to me. Do whatever works best for you. If you're real productive at night, and by nature, I personally am a night person, but I've worked in a business that's a very early morning business. So if you run a grocery store, there's bread drivers and beer drivers and soda drivers and chip drivers. They're at your door at 5 in the morning. Those guys and gals are out early delivering stuff, and you've got to be there to check them in. You've got to be there to open the store. You've got to be there to supervise. So I've been in that business 30 plus years. So I've learned to be a morning person because I'm in a morning business. I'm actually much more productive at night. So a lot of times after my whole family will go to bed, I will sit down and crank out on my creative stuff because that's when it works best for me. It doesn't matter when you do it, but if you use time management techniques and you block out periods of time every day, preferably, but even if it's a couple times a week, that time management can really help you knock out some of this stuff. So that's tip one. Tip two is the 2-minute rule. So what is the 2-minute rule? If you get a task and it takes less than 2 minutes to do, don't file it. Don't say I'll get to it later. Just do it. Do it right now and kill it dead. Like if it takes less than 2 minutes, I got an email and I could hammer out a response in 30 seconds, do it. I got a phone call and I can return the phone call. I know it's going to be a 2-minute conversation. do it right now. If you have to go online and fill out a form, you can get it done quickly, do it right now. That's one less thing on your list, one less thing you have to worry about, one less thing you have to follow up on. And if you hammer those 2 minute things out, let's say you do that 10 times during a day, it only took 20 minutes, right? 2 times 10 is 20 minutes. But you would have 10 things off of your list. You didn't touch them twice. You weren't inefficient about how you handled them. You killed them dead as soon as they came up, and you can feel really good about that. So that's tip number 2. Use the 2 minute rule. Tip number 3 is build up your self discipline. So it sounds good to say, I'm going to block out 2 hours and I'm not going to look at any social media. If you love Instagram or you love TikTok or you love YouTube or whatever the case may be, it can be challenging to do that. We would say it's very similar to working out. So if you don't work out right now and you used to bench press 200 pounds, you would not go to the gym and try to bench press 225 pounds. You'd go to the gym and start with 100 pounds, 125 pounds, and you do repetitions to build your strength back up. It's the exact same thing with self discipline. Instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and my diet is going to be perfect. I'm not going to touch a single thing that's bad for me. Right? Have we all tried that? And how long does it last? Instead of doing that, pick one thing, whatever that one thing is. Maybe it's soda, maybe it's chips, maybe it's ice cream, maybe it's brownies, maybe it's cookies. I don't know what it is, but pick that one thing and say, you know what? I can live without this, and only focus on that one thing. And then when you've got that one down, pick another thing. It's the same thing with time management. Maybe you say, you know what? I'm going to give myself a 2 hour limit on Instagram. I'm going to give myself a day. And that seems like a lot to me, but whatever. It's not a judgment. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. I'm using it as an example. So give yourself a limit and live by that limit on that one thing. And once you've mastered that, pick another one or ratchet down the limit. It used to be 2 hours. Now it's an hour and a half. It used to be 3 things I had an hour on. Now I've got 3 things I've got 45 minutes on. Right? Ratchet it down slowly and build up your self-discipline over time. You're not going to make huge leaps on self-discipline. It's just like a muscle. You have to train it. You have to get better at it because mentally it can be very taxing and exhausting. So build it up over time. Don't try to get from point A to point Z in one step. You've got to go all the way through the alphabet, one letter at a time, if you're going to make it where you want to make it. That takes us to tip 4, minimize distractions. So if you have things that are difficult for you to say no to, then find a way to disable them. Disable Instagram. Have someone change your password. Like give your password to someone else, have them change it for 2 hours, and then have them change it back. There's ways to get around this stuff that will force you to do what it is you're trying to do. And there's people that would be willing to help you do those things. If you like watching TV, don't work in a room where there's a television. Take the batteries out of the remote and put the remote somewhere way far away. So you have to consciously get up, get the remote, put the batteries back in, go back to the TV and turn it on. Whatever it is that distracts you, create an environment where it does not exist when you're trying to be productive. So I don't know what it is for you. It doesn't matter what it is for you. Come up with a solution for it. Eliminate it in the environment in which you're trying to be productive. And I think you'll find you'll be much more productive within that environment. Break down complex tasks into smaller, simple tasks. So when I was young, I was super poor and I did not have money to pay people to fix cars. I didn't know a thing about cars. But back when I started driving, you could fix almost anything with a Chilton manual, which was like a manual at an auto parts store. And they had them for any car you could think of, and a timing light and a set of wrenches. And that would typically get you going. And so I changed the transmission in my wife's car one time because I couldn't afford $2,000 to pay someone else. I could buy the transmission for $400, but I couldn't pay the $1,600 in labor. So I went and got the Chilton manual and I followed it step by step by step. And I'd never ever done a transmission before. And I changed the transmission in her car, which turned out good because I quickly had to change the transmission in my truck about 3 months later. And I had experience this time because I'd done my wife's car. But the way we got that transmission done was to literally break it down into a step. I didn't think I'm changing the transmission. The first thing I'm doing is I'm putting the car up on blocks. The next thing I'm doing is I'm loosening these bolts. The next thing I'm doing is removing this faceplate. So we broke that down into tasks. It took us, I think, 2 days, and we had replaced that transmission. Now, a gifted or a seasoned auto mechanic probably could do it in, 5-6 hours. Took me 2 days, but I got it done because I took a complex task that I didn't know a thing about, got instructions, I got help, and I followed step by step, break down the complex task into smaller, simple tasks. Anyone can unloosen bolts. Anyone can do all of the steps that are in there. You just got to do them one at a time. Step number six, reward yourself for small wins. So if you're successful, do something that you enjoy doing. Maybe you've got a TV show you really like, and if you're successful at focusing for 2 hours and really cranking stuff out, your reward is you get to watch a half hour of television and you get to watch your favorite show. Maybe you like going for walks. Maybe you like gardening. Maybe you like, I don't know what it is. You like dancing, whatever it is. Reward yourself for the small wins. Give yourself a reward. And you can tie that positive activity to the negative one. So pretty soon you're like, oh, I want to watch my show, but I need to be productive before I watch my show. I'm going to knock some work out. And then I can feel good about sitting and watching my show because I know I accomplished some things before I did it. So reward yourself and figure out what rewards work for you. You'll learn to associate the reward with the thing that you used to procrastinate on. And pretty soon you'll see that it's not so hard to knock this thing out because you've got the reward waiting for you on the other end. Tip number 7, practice mindfulness and relaxation techniques. And if you go back and watch our videos, we talk about some of these things over and over and over again because they work over and over and over again. The mindfulness, really being in the moment, really being present, really being happy. It's not even happy, but appreciate some of the little things in your life. This weekend, it's beautiful in Cleveland and it's great weather. It's almost November. I got to spend time with my family. I had a bunch of crappy stuff happen this weekend as well. But when that crappy stuff happened, I got to focus on, or I made myself focus on the things that are really good in my life and the things, the advantages that I have that I don't think a lot of people have. And that's my way of kind of recentering myself and saying, sweet, it's not so bad. Could be a lot worse. I could have all this shitty stuff and none of this good stuff, but look at all this good stuff I've got. So it's a good way to think about it. It's a good way to reframe things in your mind and really being mindful. And like we talked about the relaxation techniques, the best one we have found is what we call the cleansing breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth. That resets your brain. It resets your system. I don't know what it is about it. I just know it works. And I've said it on this channel before. I did it before every pitch I threw when I played baseball. And I would get the ball back from the catcher. I would step on the mound, and before I did anything, I would do a cleansing breath. And then I was ready to go. It was time to go again. So really practice those mindfulness and relaxation techniques. They'll help you refocus. They'll help you get your mind from racing and get it to focus on what it is you're trying to focus on, which will help prevent procrastination. And then the number 8 tip is reflect and adjust. You tried something and stop thinking about things in terms of good or bad. Think about things in terms of an outcome. You took action or specific actions and you got an outcome. Did you get a good outcome? Then repeat those actions. Did you get an outcome different than the one you were trying to get? Then change the actions. Maybe you need to tweak the actions. Maybe you need to blow them up and take completely different actions. But don't approach it from a judgmental place. Look at it and say, I took actions, I got a result. I didn't like the result. I'm going to take different actions. Or I did like the result, so I'm going to keep taking those actions because I'm going to keep getting the same result. So reflect on the choices that you make, reflect on the actions that you took, assess the outcomes that you've got, and adjust accordingly. So it's really that simple, but it's easy when the bullets are flying and life's moving 100 miles an hour and you have tons of things on your mind or tons of things that you're responsible for, or you're at the tight spot in the hourglass, whatever the case may be. It's easy to forget that you can just take a pause. You can take 5 minutes, reflect and adjust, and then you get right back at it. So I think that's a really important thing to remember. So those are 8 tips. Those are our suggestions on how to tackle procrastination. We all suffer from it. We all do it in different situations. We all handle those situations differently. And I think all of us would love to end procrastination and really get better at dealing with the things that are going on in our life. So those are the tips we suggest you use to try to tackle them. Chunk them out a little bit at a time. You're not going to see a huge change all at once in general. If you do, great, good for you. We're proud of you. We're happy for you. And that's awesome. Tell us how you did it because we're not able to do it that way. We have to make little adjustments to get a little bit better every day. And remember, That's the only comparison you should be making. You shouldn't be comparing yourself to other people, shouldn't be comparing yourself to other things. The only thing you should compare yourself is to the person you were yesterday. And can you be a little bit better today than you were yesterday? That's progress. Keep doing that every day. And a couple months down the road, you're going to be shocked at the amount of progress that you've made. So that's our episode for today, guys. Really appreciate you coming and joining us. Don't forget, James always puts it up right over here. Website saltygingertalk.com. We've got all of our podcast episodes on the website. We've got all of our social media links on the website, and we've got a daily newsletter that we publish weekdays that you can subscribe to on our website. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on whatever channel you consume it on. Also want to let you know that we are going to be on the Hidden Entrepreneur podcast. We're filming that this week with Josh Carey, and when that episode becomes available, we will post it here so you can link to it and see how that goes. So thanks again for joining us, guys. Really appreciate you coming back and checking out the channel. Everybody have a good week, and we'll see you next time.